Welcome to FSChangemakers. And as usual, we are here with an amazing woman to tell her amazing story to us. Today, we have Neelam Jain joining us. Neelam is the founder and CEO of PeriFerry, where she's literally trying to help people who are on the periphery of the society. She graduated in commerce and then went on to work with Goldman Sachs for a couple of years before she decided to follow a cause she was very passionate about and decided to help trans people lead a better life through this organization called PeriFerry. Now we'll talk to her and get to know about her, the person, and the vision behind PeriFerry as an organization. Thanks, Neelam, for joining us.
Thanks so much, Adarsh. Absolutely a pleasure to be here.
Neelam, so let's start on a slightly, informal note. Did you not like finance enough, or were you too passionate about the cause that you left Goldman within 2 years?
So I come from a Marwadi family, so not being passionate about finance is not a question at all. I think finance or wealth creation, all of that was just naturally existing in the whole family roots, and my brothers, my uncles, everybody who was associated to work. In any way outside of our homes were associated in finance. So for me, it was just like a given that, okay, once I complete my college, just get into a nice job or join the family business, but be associated to finance. But and again, this is not something that I really intended or planned to doing at all. I think I really followed what came my way, and I just lead more with the heart, I would say. Um, so yeah, I mean one of those things led me to the creation of PeriFerry, which is quite a story, which is quite a lengthy story in itself.
So, do share. How did you end up choosing this cause versus, say, anything else?
So I mean, I think in my journey of being at Goldman Sachs, which was really, really nice. I think for anybody who had graduated, GS was like, okay, this is the go-to company. I need to get in over here. Once you go in, you actually see that, okay, probably this is really not you actually wanted. Is the job as fulfilling, etc., etc. And so for me, I started exploring things even beyond the day job. So there were a lot of affinity groups that existed within the organization. And being inclusive of the LGBTQI community, having an ally group was something that Goldman Sachs had even back in 2015, 2016. So I was a part of one of those groups. And I think at that point, it was just more of observation. I used to, join some of the events that the group used to host. And for me, it was in one of those times, it was the very first time that I saw transgender people on a stage talking normally, just like anybody else. And for someone like me, it's unfortunate that I hadn't seen trans people, apart from seeing them on like the trains or the signals, etc. I think that for me was quite changing. I won't say there was sympathy, but it was just like, wow, trans people can exist anywhere. It's just that the spaces are not inclusive of them. And that kind of started the journey. After that, I started volunteering a lot more on the ground, even beyond what company was offering. I happened to meet an activist. Their name is Umesh, and Umesh was one of my first, people who really inspired me to take up this journey as a transgender person themselves. I think their journey, and seeing everything that they had achieved despite all the hurdles, really helped me take the plunge. So from there on, I pitched a project within Goldman Sachs. And I realized that the project that I was pitching could in itself be an organization. And so I quit, and then I slowly started up PeriFerry.
So that's really amazing to hear. Having that kind of belief in a cause, and why don't you share with our audience today how exactly Periphery operates?
So when PeriFerry began, it was just very, very simple. And I think that's one of the things that's really helped me as a person as well, is that we're trying to solve a very, very important problem, which is ensuring that trans people have access to inclusive job opportunities. Just like how you and I can, get any job anywhere in the world, trans people should not have any difficulty. Trans people should have access to education, to resources, so they can actually upskill and really become financially independent as well. So that's the thought with which PeriFerry started. Initially, it was just about, okay, I have a few friends who probably have their own businesses. I connect them with a couple of trans people and just make that connection happen. So it was just word of mouth at that point. Over a point we realized that this model needs to be sustained. This needs something that it can scale up on as well. So we built a recruitment model around it. What we did was we worked a lot with the trans communities on the ground, understood some of their core issues when it comes to education, skilling, job access, etc. Even if they have job opportunities, what is really stopping all of that? So we understood, okay, we need training resources in place, we need upskilling resources, we also need a bit of counseling that needs to go in, with people who may need them. So we took all of that, imbibed it in our process, and then we reached out to corporates, and we worked mainly with corporates because for us to sustain our organization, we need revenue coming in as well. So we started working with corporates and telling them that we will provide you services and we would need X amount of fee, etc. for that. So PerriFerry started placing people in different organizations. We started conducting workshops, all of which started acting as a financial model for us to sustain. And we could provide everything to the community for free due to that. And I think in this entire span, what I also realized that, this is no less than, like, say, an arranged marriage in India. You're probably connecting two sides, two very different sides together. And there is so much work that goes onto it. Because even sensitizing the existing co-workers is so important for them to understand what does it really mean to be a trans person in India, or what are the experiences of a trans person, what are the kind of life struggles that they go through. All of that takes a lot of learning and unlearning as well, because the media has portrayed things in only a certain way. So we're doing a lot of unlearning over there, and literally bringing two sides together and ensuring that they also stay together for a very long time. It's not just that you place someone and you forget it. There's huge amount of post placement sustenance work that goes on. And for me, I have learned so much from the trans community in terms of the kind of resilience that the community has. I wish we didn't push the community to that extent. But it's so amazing to see community really moving and pushing the needle forward and really inspiring so many people to actually come forward and live their best life.
So, what have been some of the biggest challenges that you've seen from the corporate side in your ability to convince them?
Yeah, I think once when we started, one of the first and the foremost challenges was we were 22-year-olds, a bunch of 22-year-olds who are like, hum ye service karenge, aap please accept kar lo, or pay us also for this. So they were just like, who are you guys? Like, what are you doing? So that took, because there was no proven model. We didn't have anybody in the industry who had specifically pitched and actually worked on this and even had a financial model around it. So there was no rule book that we were really going by, and corporates hadn't seen something like this before. So that took a lot of time. So we worked a lot with startups and small scale organizations first to build our own success stories. Um, we used to write a lot of those cold emails, etc., none of which worked. And then finally, we had one of the organizations reach out to us. For us, lucky enough at that point, Australia and New Zealand Bank, ANZ, was actively looking for ways in which they could become more diverse and inclusive. So they somehow found out about us through one of the panels and talks and stuff. And they reached out and they were impressed with what was happening, the kind of success we had had. So we went about then training their leadership first in helping them understand what it means to have an inclusive organization, and how it's not just good from a moral standpoint but even from a business standpoint, why being inclusive matters and means so much. Did all of that. I started placing people in the organization from 2017. We've had like about 98% retention, which is way better than even market standards, and some of our folks have also gotten promotion over the years. So that's been quite a thing. Some of the other challenges that have existed in this place is, and especially working with corporates, right? Like, no one's going to be outright biased or outright discriminatory, but you can see that people can be passive aggressive. You can see that there could be microaggressions. You may work with a trans person in a professional capacity, but do you invite that person for a lunch, or do you take that person as a part of your larger friends or a family group? And that's where real inclusivity actually shines through, and that's what will help a trans person or anybody else feel like, okay, I belong over here. So working on that has been quite a challenge because I think it's so deeply ingrained to see the community in a certain way. It takes a lot of unlearning for for the larger society. And yeah, I one sensitization workshop really doesn't cut through. We It's a constant work that needs to go into place.
But have you seen improvements over the last 4 odd years that now you've been working on this?
Yeah, definitely. Especially in the last 2 years, I think post 2018, when we also had the Section 377 decriminalized, that brought a massive change both within the corporate sector in terms of how they started viewing LGBT inclusive policies, hiring, infrastructure, all of that. Right, companies started investing in this space after that. And from, I think, the larger society's perspective, I think one thing became clear, that people who identify as trans or queer, gender non-binary, are not weird, are not people who can be abandoned anymore. That went out as a strong statement from the government of India. And that made a huge difference in how people started respecting and viewing the community, because if your government is decriminalizing something, which means the people have to abide by it as well, whether they genuinely agree or accept it. It's irrelevant. It's just something that we all will do.
Talking about it at a personal level, right? You hinted towards it about when I spoke about why you left Goldman so early and started this. But how was the decision like for you at a personal level? Because so early, you said, 22 years old, uh,
Yeah.
leaving such a good job and going on a path which is at at a large level uncharted. So, how did you end up taking such a big decision? Were there struggles? How did you cope with it, etc.?
Yeah, a lot of things came into play, Adarsh. I mean, genuinely, there's a lot that happened into making this possible. I think one of the first things, and I was really lucky with that, was for me, I didn't really have to worry about, say, do I will I have to worry about taking care of my family financially, etc. Lucky for me, I came from a place of privilege where I could, all I had to do was really just take care of myself. So with the salary and the savings that I had from Goldman, I could even carry on PeriFerry for another year, which is what really helped me sustain. That was a huge factor, and something that we as entrepreneurs or people don't know is, starting up is one thing, but everything around you should kind of support it. If I had to support my family financially, I don't think I could have ever quit my job or started up a startup dream sort of a thing. My life could have been very simple, and supporting something more fruitful for my family. But I think in other sense, it was a lot of introspection that had happened, especially a year or so into the corporate space. I realized that I didn't want to lead a life where I was looking at it 5-10 years down the line, that when I had the opportunity or when I had uh, the capabilities. And I think at 22 you're a whole lot more optimistic as well. So I knew that that optimism does fade with time as you see life, and I didn't want to let go of that optimism. So I thought, if it's really now or never. If I don't um, you know invest into something at my early years of my life, I don't think I will be able to do that something later on. And apart from this, I didn't have any sort of a restriction from my larger friends and family circles. And especially as a woman in the country, there can be a lot of restrictions imposed on you as to the kind of jobs you can do, and barriers in terms of you have to get married by XYZ age. And I do come from a very simple middle class orthodox background, but my family luckily has been very broad and open minded. So I've had parents who are just like, listen, go all out. Like, you don't do it now, then when else will you do all this? So I've had massive support from them, and all of that has really helped me. And beyond that, I think just massive belief in what you're doing. It really helps takes things forward.
Were you ever wondering, did I take the right decision?
I a lot. Like, I think you don't think so much before starting, or as soon as you started, because that whole high is there and you're just so excited. But I think a year into the startup, right, you start thinking about those things, because that's when reality kicks in. You have five other people whose salaries you need to pay. You have an infrastructure to manage. You need to be sustainable. You need to think about the cause and the purpose towards which you're working, and all of that constantly makes you wonder, "Kya kar rahe ho?" I mean, should I have just opted like the easy way into life? So I've had that thought, I think, throughout my second year at PeriFerry, because that was the most challenging time. Once the whole honeymoon period is over, that's when the reality kicks in. It was so difficult, but I was lucky enough to have a great team. People who kind of came along, who really believed in the same mission, and I think we all kept each other going through those really difficult times.
So, how big is the organization now?
Yeah, so we're seven of us working full time. We do have about 15 odd volunteers who work with us on a whole range of things, and about three consultants on our trainings, etc. So we have a nice small setup in Chennai, which is our headquarters. Most of our team members are stationed over there. We take in queries from all over the country for the candidate community and for the client community. Where I'm sitting right now is actually our Bangalore Residential Training Center. It's a capacity for about 70 odd people to get trained at any point in time. So we invite trans community members to come in, stay over here, experience this entire change in lifestyle environment, and then help them upskill professionally. So we're still a fairly small, nimble team, but yeah, that's how we're functioning.
So, what's the process of identifying which trans people you onboard? Because obviously it's a big community, and how do
Yeah.
you select the people
Yeah.
that you want to work with?
We actually, at this point, we have a database of about 1,500 odd people. But at any point, if you ask me, we're only able to support, like, say, about 100, 200 people through our jobs, through our training capacities, all of that. We have a screening process in place to ensure that anybody who's coming in, we're able to identify what are some of the, hopes and aspirations that they have. What are some of the things that they're looking out for in their life, and will PeriFerry actually be able to help them with that? So it's not so much about identifying if they want to do it or not, but it's a lot more about, can PeriFerry actually really be able to help this person out? And I think second for us is education experience is really not a criteria. We work with people from the trans community who may not have, like, say, even fifth standard pass. Two, we also work with people who we've placed in management level roles. There's someone that we recently placed as a HR head. So we work with a huge, very, very diverse community. And for us, the only thing that we're constantly looking out for, and we have our own metrics, etc., is the person actually wanting this service, wanting this kind of support from us. And once we've identified that, and where then when we go all out in ensuring that those things are fulfilled.
So, what's the larger vision you have for PeriFerry 10, 20 years from now?
Yeah, no, I get this question asked so much, uh, and especially in a social space, it's not a whole lot more of what you think, because there are so many social dynamics and environment dynamics that go into something like this. And I'll tell you why. Because when I started, I was like, every month we will place at least about 20, 30 people into jobs. I was like, this is the minimum. Ye to karna hi chahiye. And we met a lot of people. We met like about 100, 150 odd people at the bare minimum. But the whole conversion, no matter how many resources, etc., we realized that we were only able to create probably jobs for about 5, 7 people in a month. And if you look at it, it's like one person per week, which doesn't sound so bad. But was it in line with my big number dreams and all of that? Not really. So over a point, I've kind of learned that social space has its own dynamics. the vision that with which we function right now is we're looking at setting up 3 more residential centers in the southern part of India, Chennai, Hyderabad, and we currently have our one in Bangalore at this point. Uh, we will be hopefully impacting at least about 3,000 people per year positively through these capacities running 1,000 per every center can support at least 1,000 people per year. So we want to increase our capacity in the number of people that we're able to support per year. And but the bigger and the much more larger vision, I don't think organizations like PeriFerry, etc., really need to exist. This should be something that becomes as normal as possible for trans people to access jobs, or have something as basic as access to education, be able to find homes without even having a job should be very normal, just like probably how you and I do. The idea is that we are able to change and revolutionize our society so that things like these are, we don't have to be driving such special efforts, and trans people can exist just like anybody else in our society. Yeah.
So we're coming towards the end of our discussion, and we'd end this by having a quick rapid fire round with you, which we do with all our guests, where I'll ask you a set of questions and would request you to answer that without thinking a lot, some things that come to your mind immediately. So should we begin?
Yeah, it's just a lot of wind, but I think we can get started.
Cool. So the first one is one pivotal moment from your life that, according to you, defines you as the person you are.
Many such things have happened, but one that really strikes out for me was when this was class 11th. I had moved out from a very simple, old school to a very, one of the most high functioning, fancy schools in our city. And that change really, I mean, it was traumatic at that point in time to have gone through something like that, from an all girls school to a co-ed school, and with the whole culture change that happened. It was a very traumatic experience back then, but I think that has really helped me understand a lot more things about life, about being excluded, about feeling accepted, about feeling belonged. All of those things that I work on a day-to-day basis at PeriFerry. It started very back in my childhood. Yeah.
Thank you. Second one is from your journey at PeriFerry. Obviously, you would have had some amazing experiences, some great instances that come to mind, but anything which has left a big impact on you.
Yeah, I think one of our very first, very first few placements was something that really moved us. And this was when we placed this person. Her name is Madhu. She's a trans woman. Madhu came from a background of about 20 years of being involved in begging and sex work. Those were her only options for survival. And when she reached out to PeriFerry for a job, she was still a lot into alcohol abuse, etc. And because her family had kind of sidelined her, she had no real social circles, etc. And when we got Madhu a job, we realized that it not only changed her financial status but so much of her social life as well. After getting a job for the first time in her life, she went back to her family. She performed rituals at one of her family weddings as a woman, and all of that for her meant so much. Something like attending a family wedding may not be a big deal. We might make fun saying yaar वापस किसी शादी में जाना है, but it could mean so much to someone who has been excluded from a family for decades together. And I think that was a massive realization for me and the rest of the team, that our job is not just creating financial independence, but it's social dignity. It's also about probably connecting and stitching families back together, because unfortunately parents and families still look at financial status as a way to accept their own loved ones, which is unfortunate, but quite the truth in itself. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. Definitely quite moving, and I understand why it has stayed with you. The next one is three Indian women that you look up to.
Uh, okay, my mom, my sister, and who else? I mean, almost all of my girlfriends. I mean, my friends who are girls. I have been. I mean, I'm a feminist myself, and I think all the women around me have been a massive support and have inspired me to be so much more. So I think they're my go-to and daily role models. Yeah.
5 wardrobe staples that you can't live without.
Uh, I mean, if my friends watch this, they're just gonna make fun of me because they'll be like, Neelam has like 2 pair of clothing. She just picks whatever she finds at the top of her closet. But loose t-shirts, always a go-to. I really like white shirts, especially in the past 1 year of doing a lot more meetings online. I just feel like white has been so much more easier and nicer to work with. And a nice, pretty scarf, silk scarf, anything like that feels nice to have.
Any message that you would like to give to our audience today?
I mean, if you're aspiring to be an entrepreneur, or if you are an entrepreneur already, I mean, just keep it going. It's a journey filled with patience and everything they say, all those words, resilience, all of that. But keep your loved ones together. I think that's what really helps makes the journey a lot more memorable and meaningful as well. So that's really it.
Thanks, Neelam. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much, Adarsh.